everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of Southern Woke.
I'm Marina.
And I'm Kaylin.
And thank you guys. Ever since last episode, we've hit 3,500 downloads. So we're getting up there. And I also wanted to put it out there. What do y'all think that we should do when we hit 5,000?
Let us know. A lot of y'all have been interacting with us on Instagram, but of course, y'all can always email us at southernwokepodcast@gmail.com.
Also, with our new website, I made a page on there where you can send us topic suggestions if you want us to talk about something. So you would just go to the contact tab at the top and then just put your email and type out what you want us to talk about and we'll look at them.
And we will definitely cover the topics. Well, I'm not going to say definitely. We will highly consider covering the topics that you'll submit.
Because I'm sure y'all, if y'all think anything like us and enjoy the content we put out, we're probably going to like the topics y'all want. And I've put on topics before that people suggested, so you have a shot.
And if y'all are new to the podcast, welcome. We're glad to have y'all on board.
Yes!
Alright, so last week we started doing a teaching session where every day, instead of doing our trending topics, we're going to teach y'all something new in the world that maybe y'all haven't known yet. Which, my favorite thing is when something comes up in conversation and I know random facts about it and just flex my knowledge. So that's my favorite thing to do here. But we're going to talk about Niagara Falls today. Which, have you ever been to Niagara Falls, Marina?
No, I haven't been out the south.
Okay, well, I haven't been either. But did you know that in 1969 we actually stopped the falls? We dried up Niagara Falls in order to do maintenance.
No, I didn't.
So for a period of 8 months, we literally there's the American side and there's the Canadian side. It's 3 falls that are put together.
Yeah.
Horseshoe Falls is on the Canadian side, and it's nicknamed American Falls. So they rerouted all of the water that was going into the American Falls into the Canadian Falls. So they built these giant 200-ton rock formations that would reroute the water, and it completely dried up the falls. So there was no waterfall coming from off of the American side. Now, because the rock that the water normally went over was so used to having water on top of it, we had to plant sprinkler systems to constantly keep the rock with water, or else it would start eroding and breaking down because it was so used to having water running over it for 600 plus years. So that was pretty crazy. But can you imagine going to Niagara Falls and it's just closed? It's not flowing that day?
Niagara ain't falling right now.
It's 1969. It's you don't have the internet. You're taking your family on a vacation to see Niagara Falls.
And it's just pissed mama.
It's literally just not flowing like that.
Dude, that's wild.
Well,
I would want to imagine when you first said that. I imagine big steel walls just being put in place right before the fall, to stop it. And then I'm picturing all this water just rushing up against the wall.
Nope, well they somehow, I don't know how they did that, that had to be so difficult, but they pulled up the army team of engineers in order to do it.
That's why engineers make so much damn money, I guess.
And they ended up finding only 2 bodies, which people it's horrible to say, jump into Niagara Falls kill themselves all the time. So they only discovered 2 bodies, and one was this girl in a pink dress, and her head, this is really gory y'all, was lodged in between 2 rocks, she was stuck by her head. And she was wearing a ring, and it said, "Never forget me." And it's kind of ironic because they still haven't identified her till today. But
oh my god.
You would think they would have found a lot more bodies than that.
Dude, did you know that they do a sweep of the Great Lakes in Michigan or something every so many years because so many dead bodies are found in it?
There's one in specific, I can't remember which lake, but there's just so many.
Probably Erie if I had to guess.
Probably. And that's a prime spot for serial killers too. You know how many crime episodes I've heard about that happen around those lakes?
Yeah. Yeah. The northern states right there in general, Indiana.
Mm-mm.
Dude, I know y'all have heard about Fort Wayne, Indiana, if y'all are into true crime. But, okay, we're getting way off topic.
Okay, so back to these falls. They ended up finding those 2 dead bodies, and then they ended up turning the water back on, which wasn't I wanted it to be this giant rush of water coming through. They slowly let the water start flowing in until it got back up to full speed, of course. But the funny thing is they were supposed to redrain the lakes again this year. In 2020, they were supposed to do it. But I guess because of COVID, they delayed it. Well, you're right, last year. They were supposed to. So at some point in 2021, they're supposed to turn Niagara Falls off again for a couple months. So we might actually see it in our lifetime.
God. I wonder if our parents remember that. Well, 1969, my mom would have been 1 year old.
Why can I not do simple math in my head right now? How many years ago? Was it 50? See, my mom would have been
Yeah.
5.
Yeah, because my parents are like 51 and 52. So.
It doesn't seem like it was that long ago. Jeez.
I don't know. Also, fun fact that I just heard yesterday, Shrek is like 20 years old
Yes.
this year. Holy, I feel old.
I saw a TikTok and it said that Rosa Parks was old enough to watch the first Shrek movie.
Dude,
Isn't that crazy?
That's so weird. Like, I feel like I'm in such a time warp as of the beginning of this year. But anyways. So, do you have anything else on Niagara Falls?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Well, today we are talking about the Big Pharma conspiracies. Well, I don't want to call this one a conspiracy because these are some facts that are put out there, but it's up for debate. I guess a few of the topics we'll talk about, whether the industry knows what they're doing or they don't. So, we're going to get into it. So, the whole theory is centered around pharmaceutical companies that are operating for sinister purposes against the public good, and they allegedly conceal effective treatments or even cause and worsen a wide range of diseases. Variations of the conspiracy have included the claim that natural alternative remedies to health problems are being suppressed, and the claim that a cure for all cancers have been discovered but hidden from the public. In each case, the conspiracy theorists have blamed the pharmaceutical companies for... These are a lot of big words. Pharmaceutical companies search for profits. So basically, they think that the pharmaceutical companies are evil because they just want money. As of most industries.
I am kind of in agreement that pharmaceutical companies definitely are in it for money.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be painted very clear once we get through some of this information. So, like, the United States, I would like to imagine, like, years ago, other countries looked at us like, oh, they're such a beacon of light. They're this big, booming country. But we know that's a lie now as of recent events. But the U.S. has one of the worst healthcare systems. And despite having the most expensive healthcare system, the U.S. ranks last overall compared with 6 other really big industrialized countries such as Australia, Canada, Germany, the Netherlands, New Zealand, and the UK on measures of quality, efficiency, access to care, equity, and the ability to lead long, healthy lives. So, we suck.
Now, I do have to say, I feel like there are drawbacks to other healthcare systems as well. I know this is like a really debated thing in politics because you're basically talking about like universal healthcare versus privately owned healthcare. Mm-hmm. But there are major drawbacks to having universal healthcare as well, such as like insanely long wait times.
Yeah.
Like if you're in Europe and you need to get an appointment, you're going to be waiting a couple months before you can get in because of that privatized healthcare, which it's such a hard debate. I go back and forth
but, like,
to where I stand on that.
I have that same problem almost now. Like, I am a U.S. citizen on Medicaid, and, like, I'm on birth control, and I had to call the doctor to get a refill, and I was thinking maybe since it's, like, COVID, they'll just, like, refill it, but no, I need to go for my annual. And they tell me, and I called back in December, and they're like, oh, okay, January 28th. I'm like, I gotta wait that long.
We're also in the middle of a pandemic.
But they're like, oh, we're still gonna refill your birth control, don't worry. But if you miss that appointment, we're not refilling it anymore. And I was like, oh god, pressure. School starts right around then. We'll see if I make it.
I'm glad I'm a man.
When you get older, you're just gonna have to go get your prostate checked, okay? But okay. So, patient safety researchers at Johns Hopkins University have found that 10% of all U.S. deaths are now due to medical error, making it the 3rd leading cause of death in the U.S.
We're talking like medical error, like malpractice, like
misdiagnosing or putting them on a medication that doesn't work for them, or telling them, or that's misdiagnosing. Just like a bunch of different things. And then I know you've seen like videos of a doctor leaves a pair of freaking gloves in a person's stomach.
Like my biggest fear in the entire world. I don't know why, but it is.
Yeah, or like complications with like anesthesia or something, which makes me terrified to get my wisdom teeth out even more.
I already got mine out.
Y'all, if I'm missing sometime in March, it's because my wisdom teeth finally came around. Okay, so getting into the topics, I wanted to just put out there like what our health system is kind of like. So the first topic I want to kind of hit on is the drug epidemic and how it all started. Morphine was first extracted from opium in a pure form in the 19th century, and it was extracted from poppies, of course. And it was widely used as a painkiller during the Civil War, and many soldiers became addicted to it. Then, later on, we get heroin was proved to be more effective than morphine or codeine, and the Bayer Company, which is the company that makes aspirin, started the production of heroin in 1898 on a commercial scale. And the first clinical results were so promising that heroin was considered a wonder drug. Like, could you imagine living in that world where...
No.
It has turned out that repeated administration of heroin results in the development of tolerance, and the patients become heroin addicts. In the early 1910s, teens, whatever, morphine addicts discovered the euphoric properties of heroin, and this effect was enhanced by intravenous, is that how you say that word?
Yes.
Like, I know what it means, but I don't know how to say it. But they put heroin in their veins, and it became a narcotic drug and was banned in 1924. So then, in 1971, we get the Controlled Substances Act, and the goal was to improve the manufacturing, importation, and exportation, distribution, and all of that of controlled substances, and heroin was considered like a Schedule I drug. So,
I didn't know that, like, our hospitals and doctors created heroin.
yeah.
That's really cool. I mean, it's not
Just
cool,
like,
but...
no, just like
It's
they put like cocaine and coke and all
Yeah.
that.
Dude, the 1900s was a crazy time.
I know.
Like, how did
it was
everybody still
full
alive?
of experimentation. Dude, okay. So then we get the opioid crisis. And opioids bind to the receptors in the brain and spinal cord that disrupt pain signals. And more than 750,000 people have died since 1999 from drug overdoses from opiates. And then 2 out of 3 drug overdose deaths in 2018 involved an opiate and killed nearly 47,000 people that year. And 32% of those deaths involved prescription opioids. And then in 2019, there were over 1 million opioid prescriptions, and that's 46.7 out of every 100 Americans getting prescribed opiates.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a really, or it was and still is a really big freaking problem.
Can we, like, define what opioids are? Because I feel like I know, but I feel like I could know a lot better. Do you know, like, a good definition for opioids?
Really all I know is it's the pain pill that, like, is really good at suppressing pain because it binds to the receptors in the brain and the spinal cord. But other than that, I just know it's a really bad drug.
Okay, so it's like pain meds or opioids, basically, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
What? Okay. And then we have Oxycontin. And people call that heroin in a pill, and people were getting prescriptions left and right, and kids began even taking their parents' pills. And they began shooting it up in their veins when they discovered it gives you that same euphoric instant effect that heroin did. And then I have this like little commercial of Purdue Pharma, who is the manufacturer of Oxycontin. And I think this was like a commercial of back then. Okay.
There's no question that our best, strongest pain medicines are the opioids, but these are the same drugs that have a reputation for causing addiction and other terrible things. Now, in fact, the rate of addiction amongst pain patients who are treated by doctors is much less than 1%. They don't wear out, they go on working. They do not have serious medical side effects, and so these drugs, which I repeat are our best, strongest pain medications, should be used much more than they are for patients in pain.
And that is a speaker of Purdue Pharma. saying that you should use opioids. They're the best. And that's just one of the very many, very troubling things I've seen of people advocating for it.
Okay, not to like play devil's advocate, but let's say that we moved away from even using opioids. What would be our alternative then? Because like obviously we have to have pain medicine. I don't think we should be prescribing opioids to 46% of the population. Like that's ridiculous. But
You're gonna think I'm such a hippie with my answer, but I think weed,
think
shrooms, and all that stuff could really help people in a lot of pain. I know it's not gonna totally like fix the problem, but
yeah.
at least, like if I'm ever in pain, smoke some weed. But that's a part of my daily routine, so.
Yeah, we're cutting that out.
But anyways, I don't know if y'all have seen The Pharmacist, which is a documentary or a docu-series on Netflix, but it follows this guy, Dan Schneider. And I love this story so much because it takes place in Louisiana, in New Orleans, right around an area I'm like kind of familiar with. So this guy, Dan Schneider, after losing his son in a drug-related shooting in the 9th Ward in 1999, he embarked on this mission to bring a reckoning against the powerful figures behind the nation's opioid crisis. And he started noticing kids in his pharmacy, like, coming in that were around his son's age, which was like young teen, early 20s. And they looked very, very healthy, and they all had like prescriptions for Oxycontin. And he was like, what's going on? And then he discovered that there was a woman by the name Dr. Cluggett on Chef Highway, which I think is like in the Chalmette area, maybe. And she was over-prescribing Oxy and Xanax. And when I say over-prescribing, holy crap. 90% of Dan's patients were getting Oxy, and 99% came from Dr. Cluggett.
That is crazy. I bet she was rolling in so much money though.
Oh yeah. This doctor had hundreds of customers, like a week. I put on here like a day, but I think once I finished the whole series, I think they were saying she had like up to 70 to 80 patients a day, and like a normal doctor will see about like 20, and that's a lot for them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she probably made it go fast. She walked in and was like, all right, you need Oxycontin, gotcha, have a good day.
Dude, she didn't even really write anything but their name on the prescription, because when she got raided eventually, the FBI found piles and piles of prescription pads already signed off. She only prescribed, they called the Holy Trinity, Oxycontin, Xanax, and I think the other one was called Soma or something. It was something I hadn't really heard of. But these people would come from all kind of different states and just chill in this woman's parking lot for their time to go in. And she even had NOPD officers guarding the door that totally knew what she was doing. There was even one guy that would go in, he said he went in for some kind of like contracting work, like he was just a worker doing something to the building, and when he wanted to go get paid, she gave him a prescription, and he was like, I can't just bring this prescription to my boss, like we need money. And she went and got the NOPD officer, and he was like, your best interest right now is to take that prescription and go. Yeah. So some people even waited up to 2 whole days in the parking lot to be seen by her. And then in 2001, Dan contacted the FBI with his evidence because he was recording, like him and his wife, this old man, bless his heart, not only did he go door to door in the 9th Ward trying to find out who killed his son, a white man in the 9th Ward, that is something you don't do around here. Like, you know, if you're a white person going into the 9th Ward, you're only there for drugs. That's why his son was killed, basically. And then, so when he contacted the FBI, they were very vague with him and made him think like he was crazy almost, because they couldn't tell him they already had their own case going on against her. And the DEA was already on it too. And eventually, Dan got a 16-year-old in his pharmacy with a prescription from Dr. Cluggett that would kill her. like the prescription for the milligrams and everything, just if she would have taken what was on that paper, she would have died or like gone into cardiac arrest or something. So then he finally brought that to a different kind of authority. I forgot who exactly. But then Dr. Cleggett's office was raided and she was arrested in 2002. And what's really interesting is she was a drug addict herself. When they went into her home, it was a mess. It looked like a hoarder's house almost, but like not as much shit, just like shit in general and literal shit on the floors and shit.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Did you say what type of doctor she was? Or
She started out as a pediatrician.
like, I'm just wondering, like, did everybody know that's what she was doing, or is there people that like went there like, oh, my tummy's hurt, we're going to see the doctor, and then like Dr. Cleggett walks in and is like, here's some Oxycontin, and you're like, wait, what?
That's how she started. And like they even interviewed her in the docu-series, and she doesn't think anything she did was wrong.
Of course she didn't.
Like, and then when she went to trial, turns out she was in a very, very, very bad car accident that like fucked her up pretty bad. And so they told her you'll get like 3 years of probation versus the years and years and years she was about to get in jail. It's so sloppy, and like the fact that was happening right across the lake from us.
I know.
Like probably around the time I was still living over there. It's nuts. Like I feel like my dad probably grew up with people that found themselves in Dr. Cleggett's office. No shit. He probably knows people that died after going there. Alright. So, the next little topic is the federal government versus Purdue Pharma in 2007. And Purdue Pharma, of course, is the manufacturer of OxyContin, like I said. And they contended that OxyContin, because of its time-release formulation, posed a lower threat of abuse and addiction. And 3 executives of Purdue Pharma, including its president and its top lawyer, pleaded guilty also to misbranding, which is a criminal violation, and they agreed to pay a total of $34.5 million in fines. That didn't stop them now, we'll get there. Then there's this thing called Operation Polluted, and like it's a play on polluted, but it's spelled P-I-L-L-U-T-E-D. I thought that was like a cool little common words. But the DEA and federal prosecutors had a 15-month operation in an effort to reverse the effects of the trafficking and abuse of pharmaceuticals on the streets, and it resulted in the arrest of 280 people, including 22 doctors and pharmacists across 4 states, including Arkansas, Alabama, Louisiana, and Mississippi. And the DEA stated that the operation was led by their New Orleans Field Division and utilized intelligence data, information provided by state and local law enforcement, and complaints made by citizens to identify the people prescribing, obtaining, and distributing the drugs. And it also included, this is a long list of like agencies included, state and local law enforcement, DEA, FBI, the FDA, the IRS, the Department of Homeland Security, ATF, U.S. Marshals, the U.S. Attorney's Offices in Arkansas, Alabama, Louisiana, and Mississippi. So they had a lot of MFers going after these people. And that's just like one operation that took 280 people off the streets, but like there's millions more. Or thousands more. Hundreds of thousands probably.
So, I don't know. It kind of reminds me of like, this is such a weird parallel I'm drawing here. like the child sex trafficking thing, or if you look at like Epstein, there's like a bunch of like rings of this like going on all around the place, and to be able to like completely eliminate it or shut something down like that, it's like almost impossible.
Yeah. It's like, I don't even know. It's pretty much impossible because now that it's out there and so readily available to everyone, like it's going to be so hard to take it all out.
And that's the thing. These companies, these big pharma companies that are producing the drugs, I mean, yes, they might care about if it works somewhat, but like they're here to make a profit. Like they're pumping out drugs. They need doctors' offices to buy these drugs, so they want the doctors' offices to sell and prescribe more and more of it, so they can keep selling. Which is kind of where the whole big pharma conspiracy comes from. It's like, are they actually here to help the people, or are they just like mass producing and trying to sell these drugs no matter what the cost.
Yeah. Which brings me to the Sackler family, who is the family that owns Purdue Pharma. And their family is very famous in cultural and academic circles for decades of generous philanthropy towards some of the world's leading institutions, including Yale University to the Guggenheim Museum. And it's funny you mention Epstein, because when I saw Guggenheim Museum, that was the museum where one of his victims met him for the first time at that art show. Weird. But their family is worth like $13 billion, and when they were sued, the investigators looked into their private emails and found that they absolutely knew they were dishonest and they were in it for the money. And they considered expanding into addiction treatment to then profit more off of the problem they caused. And when promoting OxyContin, they said there's no correlation between pain medicine and addiction. And then after being sued, they flopped it all around and said there's absolutely a correlation between pain medicine and addiction. And since 1969, the sales of OxyContin have totaled more than $35 billion for them. They eventually filed bankruptcy because of all of their cases against them, but like, listen to this dude. This is Richard Sackler.
Sitting here today, after all you've come to learn as a witness, do you believe Purdue's conduct in marketing and promoting OxyContin in Kentucky caused any of the prescription drug addiction problems now plaguing the Commonwealth?
I don't believe so.
Sitting here today, after all you've come to learn as a witness, do you believe that Purdue's conduct in Kentucky has led to an excessive or unnecessary amount of opioids being located throughout the Commonwealth of Kentucky?
I don't believe so.
Do you believe that any of Purdue's conduct has led to an increase in people being addicted in the Commonwealth of Kentucky?
No.
And he just looks so smug in that whole video, like, yeah, I deep down know that everything you're saying is the truth, but I'm going to deny because I like my money.
We're putting Mr. Sackler on the trash list.
Today, we want to give a huge thank you and shout out to our very first sponsor, Podcorn. We started our podcast about 6 months ago, and Podcorn made it very easy for us to try to find a sponsor when we were ready to take that step. They always send emails letting you know about the latest sponsorship opportunities, and they guide you step by step throughout the process. Podcorn connects podcasters of all sizes with brands directly, so there's no middleman. All you have to do to get started is go to podcorn.com and sign up, then browse the many brands and learn a little bit about each. Then you set your own rate and send in your pitch. Simple as that. Podcorn's mission is to give podcasters transparency, creative freedom, and full control of monetization. Click the link in the description to get your first sponsorship today. Again, thank you so much to Podcorn for sponsoring our episode today.
And like we said, it comes back to, should healthcare be strictly, this is here to help people, or should it be something that we can focus on marketing and profiting off of? Which...
It needs to help people.
It needs to be there to help people.
And not cause more problems.
I would agree with you. Which brings us into our next topic, talking about commercials for medicine. Like, how many times do you turn the TV on and see medicine commercials? Like, every single time I really don't watch television that much anymore, but every time when I used to watch television, there'd be like a medicine commercial on every single time in between a show.
Yeah. And did you know that the US and New Zealand are the only countries in the whole wide world even allowed to do that?
All I can think about is this stupid, like, you see somebody like dancing around the screen in the background, it's like, oh, this could cause death, vomiting, diarrhea, suffering, pain, depression, and suicidal thoughts.
Yeah. It's sickening. Like, I've seen, like, these mashups on YouTube that are, like, hours long of just all kinds of medical commercials. And they're always so upbeat and cheery, like, oh, if you take this medicine, your life will be so much better. Look at me walking my dog. I can walk again.
And the reason why they keep developing so many drugs, I actually researched something about this earlier, is that, so they have like a patent on their medicine that lasts so long, and they're the only one that can create that medicine for that period of time. So that's when they make the most of their money. Well, after like 10 years or so, once that patent expires, then they really don't make near as much money off their product. So they come up with something new, which is like just very slightly different from the thing they originally had. So they just keep like reintroducing the same medicine over and over, which is why we have like so many Claritins and so many different types of allergy medications. They literally all do the same thing. It's just they keep refreshing that patent.
Yeah.
Just another way of making more expensive to take advantage of our citizens.
That's all they want to do is take advantage and take our money. Pharmaceutical commercials have actually been running on TV since the late 80s, and every year since, drug makers have more than doubled their ad spending in the last 5 years alone. And in 2017, the direct-to-consumer advertising exceeded $6 billion in spending. And drug makers can choose whether to disclose other information, including prices, in the TV ads, and drug ads don't have to tell us how many people the drug has helped, or if other treatments exist, or if other treatments have fewer side effects. They don't even need to tell us if the drug is necessary, or if changing simple lifestyle habits could be just as effective. And drug ads aren't required to tell us if insurance plans will cover it, or if there's a cheaper generic version or older medication that works just as well. So it's like very secretive.
And I'm a marketing major, so like I understand the way we phrase things to make them more appealing, and that's perfectly fine in other markets, but not in the drug market. That is something that you need to have 100% complete transparency in.
Yeah, because it's literally life or death.
Like if we're like talking about like Toyota cars versus like Ford cars, and we're saying Toyota and we're putting spins on things to make it sound better when it's obviously not, that's one thing. But when you're talking about like life or death, like you said,
No. And before the commercials air on TV, many manufacturers will voluntarily send them in for clearance from the FDA to avoid having to withdraw them later, but it's not required. And generally, the FDA doesn't review ads before we see them and only regulate ads after they've been distributed.
yes, I learned that in my own business law class.
Like, that's so shady. Like, why is that a rule? I feel like the FDA, I don't care how busy they are, but they need to review everything before it is sent out to the general public, I feel like. In most cases, the FDA doesn't ban companies from advertising any prescription drugs, even the ones that have serious risks. However, some states do ban controlled substances from being advertised. And it's also possible for drugs to be promoted before they've been fully tested to be safe. This stuff makes me so angry. And this is why I hate doctors. Like, I know there are good ones out there, but like me, someone struggling like with mental illness, like I've been diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and OCD, but I will not take any prescriptions anymore from doctors because they just F with me.
Yeah.
They don't, or at least the doctors I've been to, they don't care enough to learn about you and to think of like, okay, this affected you this way, so let's try this, and blah, blah, blah. They're just like, oh, let's just up the dose then if it's not working.
Yep.
I'm like, dude, I can't function on this medicine because it puts me to sleep. Like, yeah, I'm not depressed when I'm sleeping, but I need to be awake. It just makes no sense.
Now, I don't know a whole lot about it. Do you have anything about President Trump's executive orders against Big Pharma?
No, all I know about Trump and anything pharmacy related is like he made insulin a lot cheaper for people, which is a good thing.
He did do that, and it was on July 24th he signed executive orders. And once again, I don't know a lot about this, so I'm just briefly going to mention it here. And basically what those did was it caused the United States to pay the same price that other countries are paying for drugs. So that was one big attack and one step towards fighting Big Pharma.
One good thing he did. Also, a slide that I skipped for whatever reason is that opioid manufacturers pay doctors millions. And I don't know, have you ever seen the show Weeds?
No.
I don't think so. But if y'all have seen Weeds, like the last season, it's like about the suburban mom or whatever that like sells weed to everybody. And then the last season, after she's like been to jail and everything, she starts like getting into selling like pills and medicines and all that kind of stuff. And she goes into different doctors' offices and they're like, hey, this is this new product, do you want it? It's gonna be good for your patients. Like, they literally try every tactic ever to get you to just take those drugs and give them to your patients. And it's all about the money.
Now, I work at an Italian restaurant and we do catering deliveries like quite often. And at least like every other, if not way more than that, catering delivery we do is to a doctor's office. There's some medical rep coming in trying to sell a drug to them. They're paying for their lunch. And I've been there like setting up while they're giving their pitches sometimes. And they're trying to sell that drug to a doctor's office. So like they're literally bribing them to like sell their medication with like food. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, like anything, like, well, nothing is too low for
Yeah.
them. Also, something I wanted to hit on is fentanyl. Because it has taken my favorite artist away from me, which is not Mac Miller. It's Milky. But yeah, pharmaceutical fentanyl is a synthetic opioid pain reliever approved for treating severe pain, typically advanced cancer pain, and it's 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine. It's prescribed in the form of transdermal patches or lozenges, but the most recent cases of fentanyl-related harm and death in the U.S. are linked to illegally made fentanyl, and it's sold through illegal drug markets for its heroin-like effect, and it's often cut with heroin and or cocaine as a combination product with or without the user's knowledge. So, it's a very, 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 very dangerous drug. And literally, like, I'm trying to think of, like, something very small. Like, you could hold a pencil and, like, tap the eraser, I don't know, like an eraser amount, like that much, like less than that is enough to kill you, basically.
Yeah. 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine.
Yeah. So yeah, I just, please, if you buy drugs off the street, first of all, don't, and second of all, just maybe ask other people that bought from that person if it's safe. I don't know, just be safe because there's so much on the street that's cut with fentanyl.
Yeah, use your heads. You hear about that all the time and how many people are
Like,
dying from fentanyl.
There was such a problem with it not too long ago, like in Mandeville, of teens overdosing, and it was because it was cut with fentanyl. And like, we lost so many celebrities and artists that we love to it. It needs to stop. Okay, so the next thing we can talk about is generic brands. So in 1984, the U.S. Congress struck a bargain with the pharmaceutical companies. If they brought a new therapy to market, they won all rights to sell the product in the U.S. for a limited time, as Kaylin was saying earlier. And one way that the branded drug manufacturers prevent competition is cash. Wow, it's called a pay-for-delay agreement, where a branded drug company pays a generic company not to launch a version of their drug. And the Federal Trade Commission estimates that these packs cost U.S. consumers and taxpayers $3.5 billion in drug costs each year. And then there's also citizen petitions that offer drug companies another way to delay generics from being approved. And the citizens are actually the corporations that ask the FDA to delay action on a pending generic drug application. And by law, the FDA is required to prioritize these petitions. And they recently said branded drug manufacturers submitted 92% of all citizen petitions. And many of them are filed near the date of patent expiration, which limits the competition for another 150 days. Then there's another way to stop the generics is by restricting access to samples for testing, because the generic drug makers need to be able to purchase a sample of the branded name product to conduct bioequivalence testing. And that's because they must prove that they can make a biologically equivalent product following the manufacturing practices standard. And these manufacturers don't need to conduct clinical trials like the original drug company did because it's supposed to be theoretically the same product. But the original drug developer often declines to sell drug samples. Surprise, surprise.
It's kind of sketch.
Right. And in 2015, there were 267 recalls of generic drug products, more than one every other day, for quality issues, such as products not dissolving properly or becoming contaminated or even being outright counterfeits. But I would dare to say we wouldn't have these recalls if the branded drug companies would just give them the sample so that they don't have to like pull something out their ass. Or maybe, you know, if there were like scientists involved, like that knew what the hell they were doing to help these companies out. I don't know. There's a bunch of different ways they can fix things, but they don't.
And I know we're gonna get to talking about like the COVID vaccine and stuff later, but like she said, there was like over 200 recalls of other drugs. So like the news and the media is only portraying like the COVID vaccine as being the sketchy thing. But do you know how many things that we have consumed in our entire lives that have had issues and been like probably way scarier than this?
Dude, you remember that like crime case or whatever where like someone was going into stores and like contaminating like Benadryl or Tylenol or some kind of medicine and like people were taking it and dying?
No, that's really scary though.
Like it literally happens at every level. Like you could have a perfect drug and put it on the shelves, and that's why they have seals on them now. Like they'll have like the plastic seal with the cotton and everything. Like you gotta twist it hard, and so yeah, that was interesting. I feel like we should do a whole episode.
I feel like we should too.
Like that one was that's an interesting.
New
case.
fear unlocked.
Okay, so the next little topic is ghostwriting for new medications. 50% of side effects aren't uncovered by the time a new medication is on the market.
That's almost comical.
Right? That's why I'm just like, alright, ghostwriting occurs when someone makes substantial contributions to a manuscript without disclosure. It's considered bad publication practice in the medical sciences, and some argue it is scientific misconduct, which it is. Ghostwriting involves pharmaceutical companies hiring professional writers to produce papers promoting their products but hiding contributions, instead naming academic physicians or scientists as the authors. So basically, they plagiarize their medical papers that are supposed to state like scientific things about this medication and how it works. But in North American medicine, doctors' links to the industry are often hidden from public view, and critics justifiably argue that such relationships can taint the integrity of medical research and patient care. Because physicians rely on medical literature, the concern about ghostwriting is that doctors might change their clinical prescribing habits after reading certain articles, unaware that they were commissioned by a drug company.
I'm really aggravated by the FDA and all of this. Like, their agency's entire goal is to regulate stuff like this. Like, your job is to make sure that these drug administrations, these companies, you're like a neutral third party that's looking over all this. That way it's not just in here for money. Like, how is all this happening? I don't understand.
I feel like they really need to separate the FDA into the Food Administration and the Drug Administration.
I agree.
To lessen the load that they have to review, first of all, and just to make sure everything is being done right. Because lumping it all together, I understand they have a lot to do. There's products coming out, there's probably like a bunch of products that come out every day. But still, like, these companies need to just understand, like, oh, we can't release our product until it's approved. Because a good, like, CEO or something, like, if I was the CEO of a brand, I would not want my product on any shelf unless it was FDA approved. Because I would want that as a bragging right. But these days, being FDA approved isn't necessarily a bragging right.
No, it's not.
Oh, yeah. Then we have disease mongering. There's so many like fun terms like ghostwriting, all this.
Disease mongering.
Okay, so there's substantial bodies of medical literature dating back to the early 90s about disease mongering. and pharmaceutical companies regularly pathologize, there we go, everyday experiences, convince doctors that they are serious problems, and then tell the public it needs help and offer a cure. So basically, like, if I'm sitting like this, cross-legged for an hour or two, and I stand up and my legs hurt, they're gonna, like, link that to some kind of disease I have, like, oh my god, you have stiff leg syndrome, and then convince doctors that that's a serious problem that every person is having, and then tell the public it needs help for it. And that's where disease mongering comes from. And things like restless leg syndrome, which I think a lot of people have heard of, that's kind of like one of the diseases that were formed from this, because restless leg syndrome isn't an actual, like, disease.
Is that an actual thing? Like, would a doctor ever tell you you have restless leg syndrome?
You know, it's interesting, like, I've heard of it before, I've never had anyone tell me or a loved one they have it, but, like, my friend Jordan is pregnant right now, and it's, like, pretty common for pregnant people to have restless leg syndrome. Or let's just call it restless legs. Because it's not necessarily a syndrome.
Because my leg is, like, normally always moving. I feel like it hasn't this entire episode now, but normally it's always moving. And
studies show that the pharmaceutical industry's normal business is characterized by persistent deceit, ranging from subtle image manipulation to outright and frequent research fraud. Something about this podcast makes me, like, get my tongue tied so much.
you probably have, like, tongue-tied syndrome. There's probably just
Yeah.
medicine out there for it.
It's because that little thing under your tongue is like a different length or whatever, you know? Alright, on to the next, like, chapter of this. Natural cure suppression. So there is, like, it's been theorized that there are actual natural cures for things such as cancer, herpes, phobias, multiple sclerosis, lupus, ADD, just to name a few. And alternatives threaten Big Pharma's bottom line, and that is to make money. And private insurers are more likely to pay for Big Pharma's deadly product than for a natural, effective alternative to manage pain. Sounds freaking bonkers, but anyways. First, wait, what? You look like you're about to talk.
I was just gonna say, like, I don't know, so that I hate thinking about that, because, like, I'm not super big on, like, anti-vaxxing and stuff like that. But I do feel like we, like, way overprescribe medicine that we could have used, like, some natural things for.
Oh yeah. I'm not anti-vaccines either, because, like, you need vaccines, like, some of them, to be in your body to fight off these deadly things. Which is why vaccines have been a part of our culture for such a long time, but medicines, on the other hand.
But this also, like, carries over even to, like, dogs. Like, with Finley, they want him to get, like, revaccinated every single year. And that's just, like, so much chemical going into him that I know he doesn't need. So what we do is we get, like, titers pulled to see if he's still immune. We'll, like, go test his blood and make sure before we do it again. Which I feel like should be more of a thing we should do with, like, humans, too, just because, I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess we don't
even know
as
that
soon
was
as we
a
get
thing.
vaccinated that much. Yeah, it is.
Like, the vet does that, it'll take his blood and see.
Mm-hmm. You can draw titers, see if they're still immune, and then.
Wow.
But they won't tell you that. They'll just kind of try to keep doing it because they
Yeah.
make more money off of it, which is kind of sad.
Because, like,
but-
I've been to the vet a lot of times because I've had animals all my life and I've never heard of that.
Yep.
Interesting. Even veterinarians are being freaking psychopaths. Okay. So, psilocybin. I hope I'm saying that right. I've heard
That
it.
sounds right.
Okay. And that's mushrooms, for those of you that were wondering. And it is a chemical produced by, or psilocybin is a chemical produced by 100 plus species of mushrooms worldwide. And it has a high affinity for several serotonin receptors located in numerous areas of the brain, including the cerebral cortex, which is responsible for higher order brain functions such as sensation, perception, memory, and all of that, and the thalamus, which is responsible for sensory input. And psilocybin has similar properties to LSD and peyote, with a slightly different chemical structure. And hallucinogenic effects typically onset within the first 20 to 40 minutes of use and then disappear within 3 to 6 hours. There's a low percentage of psilocybin in most mushroom varieties, so this corresponds to about 1 to 2 grams of dried mushrooms for you to intake. Due to the alteration in sensory perception and serotonergic activity of the substance, much of the research for this agent has been focused on the mental health conditions with abnormalities in sensory perception, such as depressive disorders, anxiety-related disorders, and so on. And it's also been researched for the use in substance abuse disorders. Dude, and this all reminds me, I watched this episode of Impulsive, which is like Logan Paul's podcast, and he had Mike Tyson on. This dude was eating, like, chomping on mushrooms the whole hour. Like, just had a little baggie, and he just, like, you would literally hear it, like, he's talking and, like, smacking, and
That's so strange.
It's so disgusting, but it's like Mike Tyson. You gonna tell him to stop?
Yeah.
No. And he's been doing it for a while, and, like, he acted like a totally normal human. And he's eating definitely more than 1 to 2 grams of dried mushrooms. But he is a big man. I don't know how that corresponds, but like, but basically, like, there's been states that have legalized the microdosing of shrooms, which is amazing. And it's really, like, there's a lot of research going on to see if microdosing could help, like, mental illness disorders. I am a fan. Although I hear that it really is disgusting, like, it tastes really, really, really bad, and, like, some people put it in teas. My dad, sorry dad, used to take shrooms a lot, and, like, I think my mom said, like, put it in a sandwich, or, like, something,
Ew.
like, put it on a piece of bread with, like, peanut butter. I don't know, maybe I, like, drunk that up, but
Maybe you were on shrooms and you thought that that's what happened.
no, I've never, like, knowingly taken shrooms because I'm literally scared of how bad it'll taste or the texture, but I love normal mushrooms. Like, I'll just, like, get the raw ones from the grocery store and
Ugh,
dip
you
it in
freak.
ranch.
In ranch?
Yeah.
Ugh.
But, anyways, I just wanted to let y'all know about psilocybin in case you never heard of it before, and hopefully it's, like, legalized in a lot of states soon, and they start pinning the nail on, like, okay, this much will help your depression for a week, and, like, you know, just take some every day. I don't know. Okay, but the real what?
I was just saying, which brings us to our next topic,
Oh, yeah.
legalizing weed.
I'm passionate about
I'm
this.
passionate about this too, surprisingly.
Okay, so here's what we know so far about marijuana legalization in 11 states and in DC. Okay, so marijuana arrests have plummeted. Youth marijuana use has not increased. Marijuana legalization is linked to lower rates of opioid-related harm. Legalization has not made our roads less safe, as opposed to alcohol, you know. Marijuana tax revenues are exceeding initial estimates. States are allocating marijuana tax revenues for social good. And the marijuana industry is creating jobs. So, that's what? 4, 5, 6, 7 little facts that should, like, put you on board right off the bat. But the reason it hasn't happened yet is because of our friend Big Pharma. And they stand to lose $18.5 billion if all 50 states legalize medical marijuana. Which is a lot, but you know what? They have enough money. But anyway, scientific research reveals that a plethora of health benefits can be reaped from regular marijuana use. But these facts haven't been enough to convince everyone about its usefulness and validity, and it comes as no shock that one of the biggest naysayers about marijuana are the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the country. It all comes down to money. And for an example, months before the 2016 presidential election, the biggest personal campaign donation ever in history was made of $500,000 from NC's, I think is how you pronounce that, NC's Therapeutics, in opposition to Arizona's recreational marijuana initiative. And who are they, you ask? Their best known product is called Subsys, which is a fentanyl-based spray created for cancer patients. And it won't surprise you to learn that their latest drug at the time of that election was Syndrose, which is a synthetic version of THC.
I hate the world that we live in. I hate that companies like this can donate to politicians to try to make things go their way. It's disgusting.
There's like this whole website. I looked at it, but it was kind of hard to like comprehend, or there was just a lot of info to ingest. But you can basically see all donations made to politicians from Big Pharma, and it's a ton.
And the thing here that I don't understand is legalizing marijuana. Big Pharma could get like on board with that. Yeah, they would have to like change their strategy a little bit, but they could start selling marijuana and THC-based products and make money off of it.
Like, think of the money they spend on, like what's the word I'm looking for? A big building. I don't know.
Skyscraper.
A warehouse. That's the word. Think of like these pharmaceutical companies getting this big warehouse, and it's just dedicated to growing weed.
Yeah.
They'd make so much money. That's all you gotta do. And it's not like it's a secret like it is to make a drug. It's not a secret on how you grow weed. Just do it. Get your lights, get your pots and your seeds, and there's a lot more shit that goes into it. But if my brother... Never mind, I'm not gonna say that.
And guys, I know there's definitely probably people out there that have opposing views to us on this that don't want us to legalize marijuana, and we respect your views. Unless you're saying that alcohol should still be legal too. Because alcohol is definitely way worse than marijuana is. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that one. So if you think alcohol should be a still thing and you drink, but you don't think that weed should be legalized, like, I just don't understand.
My point is that weed isn't gonna make you, like, do the dumb shit that alcohol does. Point blank, period. It's just gonna make you more relaxed, maybe a little bit paranoid, if anything, that, like, everyone's coming for you, but you get over that, let me just tell you. Because, like...
And as a disclaimer, I'm not... Southern Wood Podcast is, like, not promoting everybody to go out and smoke weed, by the way. But we're just saying that if it was legalized, it'd be an amazing thing.
Yes.
For the United States and society. It would definitely be better than drinking alcohol.
And, Governor John Bell Edwards, if you're listening, please legalize marijuana in Louisiana. Please, like... I feel like our state needs that tax revenue so bad.
We could. It would literally help everything. And I go to California every summer, and weed is legalized there. I go to Los Angeles, so I'm like right in the hub. And people always say, I don't want to be walking around the street and smell weed. I have maybe one time when I was there smelled weed, and you smell more often if you're in like New Orleans or something that is not legal.
Say, like,
so like,
go out in New Orleans and see what you smell: weed and piss.
Exactly. And the thing is, you still can't like smoke in public there. Like you have to be on like a private property. Like I couldn't just be walking down the street smoking. It'd be like the same thing as just, like drinking in public.
YouTubers get away with it all the
Yeah, they do.
time.
But legally, you're not allowed to do that. So I don't know. Legalize the weed.
Also, these drugs would find their sales hurting if weed was legalized. First, we have antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds. And according to the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, general anxiety disorder affects 6.8 million, including me. Social anxiety disorder affects 15 million. Major depressive disorder affects 16.1 million, including me. And PTSD is 7.7 million. And those numbers mean there's a large opportunity for Big Pharma to make big money. But instead they see it as some kind of loss, and if we have weed legalized, like, they're gonna lose all that money, but all they have to do is replace the products. I don't know. Mind blowing. And then we have painkillers, one of the most addictive prescriptions, can lead to addictions and other dangerous street drugs, or the use of other dangerous street drugs, and medical benefits of marijuana for calming and managing pain is big competition. Marijuana is quite the miracle when treating people who suffer from seizures, and the biggest pharmaceutical companies out there have a monopoly on these sorts of treatments. And then we have sleeping pills. If you're a marijuana user yourself, like if you smoke that indica, you know, how sleepy it can make you. And it's like a heaven sent for people that can't sleep and have insomnia. And for this reason, it's considered a big competition for prescription sleeping pills like Ambien and Lunesta.
If you guys haven't noticed, we're kind of living our society around what makes Big Pharma money, which is kind of like the entire purpose of us doing this episode.
Yeah. So that pretty much wraps up everything I have on Big Pharma.
We had a lot of stuff we wanted to talk about with the COVID vaccine because it kind of all ties into this, but we don't have time to get into all that for today. But
if y'all do want a whole episode on COVID, like a timeline of when everything happened and the effects of just everything it's had, and the vaccines is mostly what I had researched for this episode, but like we'd be here for 2.5 hours. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting things, and then maybe if we give it more time, we'll know more of the effects that the vaccines are having, because I've seen people, or maybe just one doctor that has died from it, and they're like investigating why he died, and is it in correlation to the vaccine at all, and all kinds of stuff. So I feel like there needs to be more research done on the vaccines, but let us know if you want to hear about it.
alright, that's about all the time we have for today, guys. Make sure that you follow us on our socials. We do now have a YouTube channel for everybody out there on YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe to our video. Also, we're on almost every directory now. Tell your friends, get in contact with us, follow us on Instagram at Southern Woke Podcast.
We also have a Twitter and a Facebook page, and you could also follow our personals. All of mine are Marina Renee.
And mine's Kaylin Ricardo.
So, y'all already know, stay woke.
Stay woke, guys.